he's not relevant in fantasy. He's just not. So we're going to touch on that slightly because we have to. It's in Butler's contract. We have to mention Jared Goff. And welcome to another episode of DB2. Another week pretty much in the books. David Brem here with Daniel Butler as always. Butler, how's it treating you?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Yeah, week 4 right now. Usually record this on the Monday Night Football game around, sometime during the game around halftime. So I will mention when we talk about, I don't know how much we'll talk about the Chargers or the Raiders. Yes, there we go. I was like, oh wait, Las Vegas. So I'll say, oh yeah, it's too much. There's too much moving there. But I don't know how much we'll talk about them because obviously we don't know that much as we're discussing it. But I do want to lead off. I thought it would be interesting to just talk about the top 10. So we're going to go through about half the matchups today. We have also some short videos throughout the week, Wednesdays and Thursdays and Saturdays. And we have longer episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays. And also timestamps down below if you're looking for anything. And hit the like button, subscribe. It doesn't cost a thing. And it really does help us out. Also comment down below. Did I miss anything?
Well, I think you got it all.
Okay.
All the business is done.
All right. So I want to talk about the top 10 before we get into these positions, into these games. I'm going to try to run through this decently quick. Top 10 at each position, just to see if there's anything weird going on. All right. So, quarterback. Number 1, Patrick Mahomes. You go with Patrick Mahomes being the number 1 fantasy quarterback.
Seems pretty.
All right. Yeah. He was the number 1 going in, so that's good. Kyler Murray, number 2.
Yeah, they were the top 2 consensus.
Jalen Hurts, number 3. Surprise?
Surprise to us, and I think surprise to pretty much everybody. There were some people that were high on him, but definitely not 3 high.
Yeah, so he was I think ADP 12 at quarterback. Tom Brady, 4.
I'm not surprised.
So so Hurts definitely up at 3, Brady at 4.
Yeah.
Again, well over their ADPs, especially with Hurts. 5.
Oh yeah, I got Brady late in a lot of leagues.
Sam Darnold.
I can say pretty safely surprised. I speak for everyone not named Sam Darnold as surprised by this.
That was really the whole reason I thought about this. So
I know why you
is the number 5 quarterback in fantasy football right now, and I want to talk about that when we get to. Are we talking about the Panthers? We are talking about the Panthers. That will be at the end. I want to talk about Sam Darnold more, so we'll talk more about that later. Now, Daniel Jones, 6. Also pretty surprising, but he has that rushing, which same thing for Donald because he has 5 rushing touchdowns. But spoiler, I don't want to get into all that. Derek Carr at 7, he's playing right now. Josh Allen 8, Matthew Stafford 9, Russell Wilson 10. So everything else isn't too crazy, I don't think. Lamar
Carr's
Jackson,
a little higher than I expected, but
yeah, and we'll see after tonight because it's not going so well right now. Lamar Jackson, Cousins, Prescott, Tyrod Taylor, he's on IR. Points per game basis here. Heineke at 15, Herbert down there, Rodgers down at 18, trying to come back after that really bad week 1. It really hurt him there in that. Okay, so anything crazy besides Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold? I think everything else is.
Other than Rodgers being so low, but that's like you said, one game tank.
Oh wait, one more thing. Ben Roethlisberger, his quarterback 29. I was looking this up.
I'm not surprised by that.
By the quarterbacks that started all 4 games, from a points per game basis, the only quarterbacks below him, Jacoby Brissett, and that's technically 4, but remember Tua, he played
it's like 3.5.
2, and it's not it was 3. I think that first game it was all Tua. He came in 1, so it's technically 4, but it's really not. And then Tua got hurt in the second game, I think. And then Taysom Hill. Zach Wilson. Legitimately, he's ahead of Zach Wilson. And Taysom Hill, and then Justin Fields, and obviously Taysom Hill and Justin Fields are not really. You can't really compare those because the way Fields was technically in those games, but he didn't really play much with Dalton.
And also being ahead of Zach Wilson is not exactly something I'd brag about.
And then Taysom Hill obviously is not the quarterback. He comes in at certain things. So Ben Roethlisberger is only ahead of Zach Wilson.
So I said not surprised. I'm not surprised he's not doing well. I'm mildly surprised he's the worst quarterback in the league.
That's crazy. Fantasy-wise, he basically is.
I will say some duo of people told you that there was no way that they sustained 3 wide receivers, and I think the way he's playing, I feel pretty good about our prediction.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Running backs, Derrick Henry is so far ahead of everybody else. So if you got him at, I think like running back 4 is about where he's going. If you got him 3 or 4,
and he was
that's
like
a steal.
he was like a solid 4 too. I feel like the top 3 were set by everybody. Nobody was like, oh, maybe he makes his way into that top 3. I feel like he was a solid 4 too.
Yeah, and because he doesn't have much receiving, like he's going to come back. They rely too much on him. He just can't. No, it still works. Still works.
It works until they run him into the ground.
Cordell Patterson, running back 2. Everybody called that, obviously.
I don't want to talk about Cordell Patterson.
I mean, that's crazy.
Ready to go in my lineup. Oh, Dalvin Cook's going to play. Great. How do you bench Dalvin Cook? I'll tell you how. I should have just done it. I know you can't, but it hurts to watch.
It's crazy. He's running back 2 because
he also like
all that
I'm sure. Well, that and this week was crazy. Like
I think he's had a few good weeks, but yeah, he's had a lot of touchdowns. 5 touchdowns total.
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey by a points per game basis, number 3. You expect that. Austin Eckler playing right now, 4. No surprises. Aaron Jones, number 5. Nothing there. Najee Harris also at 5. Good for him. He has been playing well. A lot of catches. He has 26 catches. That's Big Ben just dumping it off.
Well, he can't get it to the wide receivers. So
Ezekiel Elliott at 7. Maybe Tony. Not time for Tony Pollard right now. DeAndre Swift at 8. I've been pleasantly surprised. Being a Swift owner. Josh Jacobs, not going to count him because he's only played 1 game. Kareem Hunt, number 10, ahead of Chubb.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing is, well, everybody kind of knew they'd both have value. We were all pretty sure that Chubb was the main guy, and I think at the end of the year, Chubb will still probably be ahead of him in some sort. But he's been on fire.
Yeah, I mean it's basically a 50-50. I mean they just ride the hot hand, and they're both really, really good. Darrell Henderson at 11. Oh, we're going to talk about him soon, so I won't go too much in that. James Robinson at 12. Saquon at 13. A little below ADP, but he's coming off a massive game. And then there's a few names else I want to talk about. Zach Moss, 14.
Who we've talked about.
And he's only played 3 games, but is averaging 15 points a game. Chase Edmonds, Nick Chubb at 17. There you see it. He'll be fine, but obviously Chubb, Hunt, they have a dual-headed monster, so he's still fine. Alvin Kamara and also Dalvin Cook tied for 18. And that was the big thing there. Dalvin Cook and Kamara both. They were 2 and 3. Cook and Kamara respectively, number 2 and 3, and they're down at running back at 18. Now, Cook obviously is fighting an injury, but Kamara, I think Cook, I expect him to easily go into the top 10 and maybe even top 5 by the end of the year, depending on if he can overcome this not great start. But Kamara, I don't know. I mean, that offense is worrying me there.
The offense does look great, and the offense doesn't look great, and they don't really have to worry about the passing game. So teams are just kind of shutting down the run. So, and those were like, I can't think of a league that I was in that those guys weren't 2 and 3. Like they kind of reversed back and forth between a couple of my leagues. Like some of them Kamara went 2, some of them Cook went 2, but they were 2 and 3 and everything.
And I'm not going to go too much into wide receivers because we'll probably touch on a lot of these guys. And with a lot of these, I just thought it was interesting, some of these names that we see. Mike Williams, wide receiver 1. Now, he's wide receiver 1 now because it's a points per game basis. After this week, I'm assuming he's not going to get 26 points based on how this game's went so far. He will fall down, but obviously he's won people weeks.
Oh, yeah.
He's been phenomenal. Cooper Kupp didn't have a great game. Again, we'll talk about him soon, but he
didn't have a great game this week, but he's been on
and he's
insane.
Right below Mike Williams. He will be wide receiver 1 probably after this week. Yeah. Tyreek Hill. Wow. Debo Samuel.
Boomer bust. Yeah.
Number 4, another crazy. He just had a crazy wide open touchdown in this game. Just completely blown coverage. Ran for like 70, 80, or I don't know. It's crazy. DJ Moore at 5. We're going to talk about him later, but oh my goodness, he's been insane. McLaurin, amazing game. Justin Jefferson. Deontay Johnson at 8. Jamison Crowder has only played 1 game, so I won't count him. Devontae Adams, and then Tyler Lockett at 11.
That tells you how good the first 2 weeks of Tyler Lockett were, because the last 2 weeks have not been good.
The big thing for me, I just want to point out here, because we don't really spend too much time on tight ends, I want to get into these games, but these wide receivers, we didn't see Hopkins. He's pretty far down. Devontae Adams was all the way down at 10. That's why running backs are so valuable. Why we're going to talk about tight end here very, very quickly, but Tight ends, maybe even more so. Wide receivers, it seems like you can get a lot of value late, and even the guys that you think are super safe. And it's not like you're not going to play Devontae. It's not like you're not going to play Hopkins, but the value, even Devontae at wide receiver 10, you have not gotten that first round value from him.
No, well, and I've noticed that just from like setting my lineups every week, is I have wide receivers I'd be more than happy to play on my bench because I just happen to have better wide receivers. Like I ended up with too many wide receivers, and I probably should have one of those earlier wide receiver picks I used. I probably should use those on a running back or maybe a tight end because I'm benching guys that should be starting.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can a lot of times you can one of those guys that you draft late, those wide receivers that you're kind of like you're just kind of saying, oh yeah, I got my 3, I'm gonna have 4. A lot of times that guy, that 4th, 5th, 6th wide receiver you draft ends up being a starting caliber wide receiver. Doesn't happen really with running backs. So
No.
very rarely, unless an injury. Tight ends, just really quickly. Rob Gronkowski is technically tight end 1. He didn't play this past week, but on a points per game basis, he is tight end 1. Kelsey 2, Waller 3. No surprises. But I mean, Gronk is a surprise up there, but
Yeah.
obviously Kelsey and Waller. Dalton Schultz, I've talked highly of him in the past. He's coming off a couple good weeks. T.J. Hawkinson, Dawson Knox for Buffalo, Noah Fant. You can just see how crazy. I don't even need to go any farther. Tight end George Kittle down at 10, which is definitely a surprise. Kyle Pitts down at 17. But yeah, it's tight end's a wasteland. If you got Gronk, obviously you're super happy. But outside of that, any later tight ends, I mean, if you didn't get Kelsey or Waller, I mean, you're kind of like with, you might have been able to get a Schultz or a Dawson Knox. I know Fant's been solid. It's just those top couple guys have been so much better. And even Kittle, who you paid a premium for, so far hasn't
well,
been there.
Kittle and Pitts were two of the, I mean, they were right up there, and Pitts has been, it's one of those things we all, I include myself in this, really liked his potential, and at least to this point hasn't really shown it.
Yeah, so I just thought it would be interesting to go through that. I always think it's fun to look at some weird stuff that's going on, and the big thing for me is obviously Cordero Patterson is one of the biggest ones. You got Cordero Patterson as running back 2, Mike Williams as wide receiver 1. Again, you could get some crazy value later in the draft, or just pick them up on waiver wires even sometimes, which is pretty wild. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and dive into it. We've already obviously talked about some of the players that we'll talk about, but you have Rams at Seahawks. This is a Thursday night game. I always say it's going to be like the Jags, Jets. These Thursday night games are trash. Not the case this week.
Not this week.
We got a lot of talent, a lot of fantasy value here.
And when I for sure was I'm letting you take the Rams. I'm not taking that away from you.
Are you sure?
I'm not taking it away from you. Go for it.
Has anybody on YouTube, anywhere, Twitter, anywhere you go, have anybody been on the Van Jefferson train before me? Because I was on that and I said, man, this guy is seeing the field. He's the 3rd wide receiver. They play 3 wide receivers every down pretty much. They can support Matthew Stafford. Obviously that helps. It helps that I'm a big Stafford guy, so I was kind of, I was higher on him than a lot of people too. But Van Jefferson had 6 targets, caught all 6 for 90 yards is what I have. I think that's correct. And really nice game. Really nice. Top 10 wide receiver. I will go ahead and say, though, I'm going to just take a step back because obviously he only had 6 targets. Cooper Kupp still, this wasn't, this is a down game for him, but he just ain't in the end zone. He had 13 targets. Obviously, they didn't connect. 5 for 64. Robert Woods got a lot of garbage time. I'm a little worried on him. I know he technically did better than Kupp, but that was all at the end. I don't know. He did get a touchdown at the end, but a garbage time touchdown. 4 for 48, a lot of that. I'm like, man, I'm glad I started Chase. Ended up being basically the same. And then Higbee is fine. I'm really happy with Van Jefferson. He was on the field 68% compared to 32% for Deshaun. Again, Van Jefferson is wide receiver 3. It's not as clear as Kupp and Woods. Those are still the guys you want to own. As much as I love Van Jefferson, Woods is still the guy who's on the field all the time. They still love him. So there's a good chance you still got to put him out there because he's in a high-powered offense and on the field all the time. But Van Jefferson on the field about 70% of the time and compared to Deshaun, who is on the field 30%, which is taking that away. But it's basically either Van Jefferson or Deshaun Jackson. Always 3 wide receivers every single play. Mm-hmm. So
and we talked about Deshaun last week. He had a great great week 3. that's going to happen every once in a while, but I still don't think you can go anywhere near
He's a big
Deshaun
play
Jackson.
guy for sure.
Yeah.
So he'll get some big weeks unless it's a really deep league and you need that on a bye week. And you're like, you know what, though, there's a good chance he could give you a goose egg because he's just not on the field enough.
No.
And one guy we didn't talk about even before, Darrell Henderson. He's running back 10 right now.
That was going to be the next thing I brought up is if you got Henderson, I got him in one draft, and I'm not going to pretend to be some genius. He was just happened to be the running back that fell to me where I got him, but I'm super excited. He's vastly outperforming where you drafted him, and in this offense, one of the scary things is we've talked about 3 wide receivers that we like on this offense, so you would think, oh, like the running game must not be really that helpful, but he's involved in the passing game. He's getting all of the rushing. Like you said, he's currently running back 11, and for a guy that you drafted in the mid-20s for running backs, you're ecstatic. Like he's every week, put him in there solid, don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't. This is by far he like doubled up his catch total. I think he only has like 9 catches on the year. I think I have that.
Yeah, but he's not like that's the thing. He'll get you a couple, but the rushing's going to sustain you too.
He's a little more involved maybe than like Ezekiel Elliott, but yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He had 5 catches this past week. So if you got him in as your kind of like a flex option, a mid-20s running back, he's borderline running back 1 to me, like right on the edge. He's currently at running back 11. I look at the guys ahead of him: Derrick Henry, Cordell Patterson, Christian McCaffrey when it comes back, obviously.
Well, depending on where you play, like Cordell, there I can't remember where it was. I was checking one of the sites. Still has Cordell as a wide receiver only. So he's not even eligible.
Yeah, so Eckler, Jones, Najee Harris, Elliott, Swift, Hunt. I mean, if you look at all these names ahead of him, there's maybe a guy or two you might even play him over. And then there might be a guy or two below that you might like better. You got Kamara, you got Cook, you got, though, again, I'm not so sure on Kamara, but Cook, maybe Nick Chubb. There's a couple guys who might look more, but he's borderline top 12. So in a 12-team league, 14-team league, this might be your running back 1. Or there's a good chance you have one of these top guys, and this is your second running back, and then you feel really good about it.
Well, here's the thing. If you drafted a guy as the 24th running back, and you now have, at worst, a super solid number 2 running back, that's a win.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. Stafford's also been pretty good. Where he drafted him, he's been not the best week for him. Not the best week overall for the Rams. Not a great showing overall. Cardinals beat up on him pretty bad, but still a lot of fantasy value to be had. For Henderson, the rest of the guys that you start, probably a little disappointed with, but better days ahead for obviously Cooper Kupp. Woods, I'd like to believe better days ahead that this is technically his best game.
No, you don't. You want Van Jefferson to be the number 2. Don't pretend.
Well, I actually am more likely probably to start. I do have both, but I'm probably still more likely to go to Woods. So obviously I would like to see his production go up a little bit. But then moving over to Seattle. Seattle here, you got Russell Wilson down at quarterback 10. Hasn't had that, I'll say it at this point, this Kyler Murray type game because of how Kyler has some crazy games. Russell usually has some of those as well. Yeah. Hasn't had any of those where he has a rushing or 2 touchdown, and then also the passing. 150 yards passing this week. Just couldn't support any wide receivers.
Not at all. He did. He threw 2. He did run 1 in, but it was like he only had 4 rushes for 26 yards. So it wasn't like he has a good rushing game. He just happened to one of them be in the end zone. So fantasy wise, he had an okay day, but yeah, you're still, this isn't exactly the production you were expecting out of him. The big name on this team all year has been Lockett after the first 2 weeks where he really went crazy. And the last 2 weeks, he just kind of fell off. And I will say, while you were technically correct that starting Jamar Chase over Tyler Lockett was probably stupid, it did turn out to would have been a preferable play. But Lockett I think is going to be fine. He's had a couple of bad weeks. He's probably not the number 2 wide receiver, but he's gonna come back to where in that probably 15 to 20 range where he kind of belongs. Metcalf is kind of stepped up from where he was the first couple weeks a little bit. So I think that's going to even itself back out, kind of what we expected out of these wide receivers. But they're both still guys you're starting pretty much every week. And it's very unlikely you've got a better option than Russell Wilson, even though he hasn't had those big blowout games that you're kind of used to.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably the case. I mean, obviously, his best game's probably still ahead of him.
Yeah,
He
he'll have a game where
he'll have
he
some
throws
games
for
where
one and
he's
rushes for three, and
yeah, he'll have some games where you're like, "Yep, I won my game because of Russell Wilson for sure." It just hasn't happened yet. One thing I did want to mention, yeah, Tyler Lockett. Don't worry about him. You put him in. DK Metcalf also coming back here. Don't worry about him. I mean, he only threw for 150 yards. Russell Wilson. It's hard to have too much value there. But both Lockett and Metcalf both great. The running back situation is interesting though. Alex Collins getting a lot of work. So I am slightly worried with it's basically in this game was a complete timeshare. So you see a lot of that with Alex Collins getting a couple catches as well as the touchdown rushing. So yeah, I still think obviously Carson is the guy. But,
I think for now you have to, but it's something to watch.
But his ADP is 16. You have been disappointed. Okay. I should say you've been disappointed. His first 3 weeks have been exactly what you were hoping to get out of him. This week you're disappointed, and you just got to watch it.
You're disappointed with something that makes you pause.
Yeah, you still got to probably play him, unless there might be a chance you have better options. Good chance you have to play him this against the Rams, but something just to consider. Watch out for this Alex Collins timeshare, and obviously, yeah. I mean, I don't know if he should be picked up yet, but it's something to look out for because it was pretty close to a 50-50 split.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we have and here's your public service announcement, 9:30 a.m. game. So make sure if you're like me, and it's usually about 11:30 noon before you really kind of lock in those Sunday lineups. Make sure if you got any Jets or Falcons to get those set up before that. Jets. Corey Davis had another crazy game. He's been. We talked about him. We're both pretty decent fans of him. He had another crazy game, but he's still one of those guys. It's tough to start him unless you have to, just because of he was the number 7 this week, but he was also 88 in week 2 and 49 in week 3.
I mean, he had a 53-yard touchdown where Zach Wilson was like pointing him upfield. He just slung it. It was a perfect. It was a perfect throw.
Yeah.
And Corey Davis made the catch, which was a great catch. But yeah, an absolutely gorgeous throw. Which Zach Wilson he'll throw it. So he'll have some of those because he'll throw it a lot. But he threw for a better game for Zach Wilson here, fantasy wise too. If he's throwing for 300 yards, Corey Davis is going to be a top. Honestly, he'll probably be a top 20, top 25 guy because he's the number 1. So
yeah, but that's a huge if.
Yeah, and if he throws for 300 yards, I should say Corey Davis is probably a top 15 guy, maybe even more. But yeah, if he can throw even close to 250, that's going to be really good for Corey Davis. And you might be playing him depending on. I mean, ADP of 40. There's a good chance you weren't expecting to start it, but he's been a couple obviously boom hits here. This week was pretty good. I did want to talk about. There's not much running back wise. Michael Carter continues to be meh. I did want to talk about Jamison Crowder comes back first game. I said he was like technically a top 10 receiver because it was his first game and he had like 17 points, something like that. But had a touchdown, 7 catches, 61 yards, 9 targets, and I was looking at the snap counts and I was looking at it. And I'm like, kind of interesting. He was the second highest snap count, slightly ahead of Keelan Cole. But that's kind of interesting to me. He comes back. He obviously, Zach Wilson, even though he's been out, Zach Wilson trusted him enough to be like, I'm going to, went to him 9 times. Granted, I know he only averaged 8.7 yards a catch, but still, PPR wise, obviously, if you can get a catch, you don't really, I mean, you do care on a longer catch, but a catch for 10 yards, that's a couple points, it doubles up your points there. So 7 for 61 with a touchdown is pretty solid. Yes. I guess just doing the math there. Yeah, it's 19.1 points. So a really solid game. I think that's a name to watch out for. Again, I don't necessarily think the Jets can support 2 wide receivers every week, but I do think in a deeper league especially, there's a good chance this is somebody to pick up, and you might be forced to play him when bye weeks come around if he is going to continue to be that wide receiver 2 like he was this week. The guy who I mentioned, Keelan Cole, who was the other guy who was, kind of on the field about the same amount of time, wasn't nearly involved target-wise. He had 4 targets. He did have the long catch. But so I do think the 92 yards is slightly it's not quite.
It's unlikely he's going to average 30 yards a catch.
Yeah. So again, something to look out for. You're obviously not playing Zach Wilson. You're probably not playing Michael Carter. Ty Johnson is there as well, who gets a good. Tevin Coleman even gets some snaps. Michael Carter gets the bulk of it, about 50%, but then Johnson gets a third. Tevin Coleman gets his little bit. So, it's not a great running back situation for now unless something changes. So, Corey Davis, good chance you might be starting him. And Jamison Crowder, I think, honestly, in a deeper
when
league,
bye weeks come along,
might be playing him as well. And deep, especially, in a bye weeks come around. And probably in a still a little bit of a deeper league.
And on the other side of the ball, Atlanta. I don't know how we don't start with Cordell Patterson in this game. He had 5 catches, 3 touchdowns, 6 carries, only 34 yards on the ground. But I mean, he's had 2 weeks like this now, and honestly, his other 2 weeks have not been awful. Week 3 was 18. Week 1 was 36, so you're not ecstatic, but you're also nobody was starting Cordell Patterson week 1, so nobody cared. But he's been pretty solid, and it looks like he's just going to continue to get a ton of work in this offense.
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance that you did start him this week. Pretty good, because he's coming off of really one really great performance in week 2, and then week 3 was pretty good as well. So there's a pretty good chance you're like, okay, I'm starting to believe it. And
like I said, if Dalvin Cook had stayed injured, he would have been in my lineup, and I was happy about it. Somebody you're not happy about, if you drafted, is Ridley. He was the number 5 wide receiver off the board, and he's currently at 26. And that's not like, he had one really bad game. That's kind of where he's been living. Week 3 and week 4, he's 26-23. Did get up to 16 in week 2, and really bad week 1. Week 1 is kind of week 1 the whole offense was kind of garbage. So I'm not gonna. He's not the 60th best wide receiver, but I don't think he's going to get anywhere near that top 5 where you drafted him.
Yeah, and again, this is like we're like wide receivers. I'm kind of even rethinking kind of where I'm maybe going to place them next year. When I'm just seeing all these people up at the top, is like, man, this is kind of wild. You see Ridley, you see Hopkins, and I'm sure there's a few others that are much lower than where you drafted them. But Ridley is obviously one. Even Adams is down at like wide receiver 10. But yeah, Ridley, currently wide receiver 26. It's just, obviously you're playing him. This doesn't really mean much for your lineup. It just is like something maybe for next year when you're drafting to think about. And also, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it just shows that Falcons, at least right now, is just not able to get the ball to him. And hopefully better days ahead, especially in the red zone. He had 7 for 80. So obviously if he gets a touchdown, he's probably up close, top 10. So it's like
a decent day.
And right on that same note, Kyle Pitts did have Ridley had 13 targets. Kyle Pitts had 9 targets. If you get 9 targets out of your tight end, you're super excited about that. Even if you paid a premium for Kyle Pitts, 9 targets. It's just unfortunate. It's only 4 for 50, and again, a touchdown. He's probably borderline top 5 tight end. Instead, he's tight end 14. But I mean, 9 targets, I got to trust, that is, if he's getting that sort of love.
Well, and everything outside of Kelsey and Waller, tight ends are very touchdown dependent week to week. So I'm still rolling with Pitts. I still think he's going to be good. I believe in one of our first shows, I said that he had a chance to crack into the top 5. I don't know that I think that anymore, but I still think he'll end the season as a top 10 tight end. And I think week to week, unless you hit on Gronk, which is unlikely, you probably didn't draft 2 tight ends, and definitely not if you had drafted Pitts. So there's also not been a huge breakout star like from the waiver wire tight end wise. So you're probably still rolling with Pitts and just kind of hoping for better days. Yeah, Schultz possibly.
Weeks. But I don't even know if you'd probably still starting Pitts. I think there's a good chance. But Pitts, I do think what I will say, when you say you don't think he can be top 5, if he has one game, because of how tight end is, if he has one game where he's like, I don't know, a couple touchdowns, 100 yards, which could happen.
Yeah, that's possible.
He's immediately vaulted up to probably close to top 5, like right on the season, because of how 1 or 2 games can, because there's just not that much the middle of the pack is just so close because they don't really score.
I think my thinking on that was just like Kelsey. You got Kelsey. You got Waller. I think Gronk is going to be fine once he's healthy and back. I think he's not going anywhere. Kittle's going to be like, you've got one spot in that top 5 that I think is even like open. So I guess he could grab it, but the point is you're going to still probably start him. And I do think there's going to be better days. Matt Ryan, though, thankfully you didn't, like, more than likely did not. Even though he had a great week this week, you're still not going anywhere near him unless it's a very deep league or bye week situation. And hopefully he's got a good matchup on your bye week. All right, and the other side of the ball, we got the Packers. There's some interesting stuff, but just like quick to touch on, Rodgers back kind of, we've talked about his quarterback ranking is pretty low, but that's all week 1 is still tanking that. Another top 10 week. I mean, not the top 5 guy you drafted him to be, but he'll get there. And he was there week 2, and you're still like, I don't know what situation you'd be in to be benching Aaron Rodgers, but I can't picture it. But a guy who's been, I mean, he had a great week 3, but a couple of weeks definitely not where you expected him is Adams. I mean, he was the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver, and right now he's just barely in the top 10.
Yeah, and again, you got to kind of trust the volume there. But in Rodgers only threw for 250 in this game. So granted, usually a lot of that does go to Adams. Adams only got 64 here. Aaron Jones was not great in this game. Actually, I was going to say he was fine, but he wasn't great. We do want to talk a little bit about Dylan, but the wide receivers, Randall Cobb is kind of interesting, right? 5 for 69 for 2 touchdowns. That's with 6 targets. Again, I don't expect this might be his best game of the season, but getting those couple touchdowns, but still.
I mean, we all know he's got the talent to have these games every once in a while, but it's not something I think you can count on.
Yeah, and do you want to talk anything about Robert Tonyan?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Okay. I've made some decent calls on this show, and then I've made some poor calls on the show, and that happens to be one of them. He was the number 5 tight end week 2. I'm going to continue to think about that. Well, he is not very good the rest of the time.
Yeah, I think
who could have known? The guy who was very touchdown dependent that I tried to believe in didn't work out for me.
And I think when he was tight end 5 was like he didn't even have a good. It was like 1 touchdown, but he had like 40 yards. It wasn't even, it was like which is how tight ends usually work. But
all right, I've like I said, I kind of backed 2 tight ends on the show. Neither one's working out great so far, but I've been doing pretty good at wide receiver, so I'm gonna continue to think about that.
Yeah, and Aaron Jones. We got Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. I don't think you really touched on that, but
no, that was gonna be the end.
Yeah, so Aaron Jones was on the field 60%. Dillon was on the field 40% of the time. I do think with this, obviously Dillon averaging almost 5.5 yards carry to Aaron Jones 3. But Jones also had 3 catches for 51 yards. I do think still Jones is a guy you're going to try out there, no doubt about that. Obviously. But I think there is a lot to say about how this game went. I do think Green Bay was in the driver's seat for much of this at the end of this game, and Dillon was out there. I don't know if they're just trying, maybe Jones was banged up a little bit, or really that was just like they knew they had the game on hand and they wanted AJ Dillon. That's the guy to go to when it's a run first scheme. Which is what they were doing a lot at that game, which I think that has a lot to do with it. So I wouldn't look too much into it, but it is something to look out for. This is the most snaps he's had all year, 40% of the snaps. So there are going to be some games if the Packers do get up big that AJ Dillon looks like he would be the guy. So just a thing to consider.
A name to keep your eye on.
If you're expecting a blowout or something, you're like try and go. Maybe you need a fill-in or a daily fantasy option. Maybe it's tough to imagine AJ Dillon having a crazy good game, but he got 15 carries in this game, as well as a catch. So obviously, that's pretty solid for if he could do that again. If he gets into the end zone, he has a really, really nice game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next up we have the Bengals. And I'm trying to remember, did we say that Tyler Boyd might have a pretty decent day with Higgins out? Did we mention something about that? I seem to remember Boyd went off. 9 catches, 118. Honestly, if he could have came down with a touchdown, if they hadn't just thrown those touchdowns away. I say thrown them away just because we're talking fantasy here. To the tight end, Boyd could have had a crazy day, but as it is, number 9 wide receiver, 118 yards, 11 targets. We talked about this with Higgins out. I still think Higgins looks like he's going to be back for Sunday. So Boyd, I think, falls right back to that third wide receiver. But we've talked about this offense. They play 3 wide receiver sets. Boyd's going to continue to have some value. He's not going to be the number 9 wide receiver on a week to week basis, but he's going to continue to have value. He's got the talent.
Yeah, so Boyd was clearly wide receiver 2. Jamar Chase clearly wide receiver 1 in this game, just the way snap-wise. But Boyd having a much better game here on 11 targets, obviously with Uzuma getting the 2 touchdowns there. Not something you would expect going forward, but probably in that boom.
Wait a minute. He was the number 43 and the number 50 tight end the 2 weeks before that. So you had number 1 tight end coming.
A boomer bust tight end, maybe, if this,
he's a bust, boom, bust. Like,
yeah,
he'll probably have 2 booms all season.
Especially if one of the wide receivers are out and they need, somebody to fill it. There could be something, but clearly Chase and Boyd were the guys of choice if you were starting wide receivers here. Higgins not playing. Auden Tate was on the field 34%. We talked about we weren't worried about Auden Tate coming in. We trusted the talent with Tyler Boyd. Mike Thomas, wide receiver, was on the field 31% of the time. Trenton Irwin 28% of the time. So there was a lot of guys, Auden Tate, Mike Thomas, Trenton Irwin, kind of all. Obviously, none of those guys are fantasy relevant, but it was clearly Boyd and Chase, the third wide receiver. They just had a rotation going on for the most part. Boyd was 60%.
When you say none of them had more than 1 target,
so those were the guys. Obviously, Uzuma getting the touchdowns and 6 targets is not something that anybody was expecting based on the first few weeks. Mixon does get into the end zone, which helps his fantasy value there. It wasn't great for him overall, but he's a solid running back. He started off hot. Looks like he's come back. He's come back to earth there. With that first week, it really was carrying him, and now he's okay. I still think he's still a guy.
He's still a top 20 guy,
and he's probably, honestly, he's 20 right now. He's probably a top 15 guy, about where you drafted him. I think you're happy with Mixon. Obviously, getting to the end zone this week, you're not going to complain too much about the game.
Yeah, and Burrow, you're probably still not starting anything but pretty deep leagues. But he also looks like very much, if he's sitting there on your waiver wire, if you have a league where you're not holding 2 tight ends, which should be every team, but it's not. But if Burrow happens to be available on your bye week, there's definitely worse options because he's been pretty solid, but not a guy you probably want to start on a weekly basis.
He's been solid, real-life quarterback, but he's just the fantasy. He had a really good game. It just doesn't necessarily always translate to fantasy. This week, if you played him, you're like, okay, solid. But still, even with past 350 yards, having a great QBR doesn't count, this huge, great passer rating. They don't give you fantasy points for that. So
if it does, you're in a very interesting league, and I'm intrigued.
That is an interesting league. But yeah, a couple touchdowns, good solid game for him. If you played him in a 2-quarterback league, you're pretty happy with his best fantasy game so far.
From an NFL standpoint, I think that's going to be a very good game on Sunday, the Packers-Bengals. I think that's going to be interesting.
I'm really interested in that one.
Next up, we got the Lions, your favorite quarterback of all time. But he's not relevant in fantasy. He's just not. So we're going to touch on that slightly because we have to. It's in Butler's contract. We have to mention Jared Goff. But we do want to talk about the running backs. We've talked a ton about this pair of running backs. Probably between them and Jamar Chase. I guess real quick on the Bengals. Jamar Chase didn't have a great game. I'm in no way concerned about him. But we're on to the Lions. But Swift and Williams, not their best weeks. But Jamal Williams looked decent in the running game. He just wasn't involved in the passing game this week like he normally is. Swift still got was it 6 targets, I believe? Yeah, 6 targets. And I'm not worried about these guys, but definitely a down week from what you've kind of gotten used to from this duo.
Yeah, for sure. I'm high on both of these guys because of the quarterback play being so stellar. And I don't think there's much that, I can talk about. I just can't. I can't think of anything nicer to say than just how amazing he is at getting the ball to his running backs. So a quarterback comparison, all right? I have a great one here. A quarterback that Jared Goff reminds me of that also does something similar, dumping off to his running backs, or just one running back in that situation. And he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. I honestly think this is a great comparison. Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff. He's getting compared to a Hall of Fame quarterback. So there you go. That just tells you how highly I think of Jared Goff. Now, DeAndre Swift. Not his best game. Obviously, he still had 4 catches. He's on the field. It's a 2-to-1 split. He's on there. Jamal Williams. Yeah, where's the catches at? This was a weird game because the wide receivers, even Hawkinson didn't have a great game, were the guys who were getting all the fantasy love. Why is Jared Goff passing it 38 times and Swift only has 4 catches? Why does Jamal Williams not have a single catch? What are we doing?
I think the only real explanation is he's doing it specifically to spite you. He has watched the show, and he's doing it specifically to spite you.
Because I'm super high on DeAndre Swift. I believe he's currently running back to 8. Drafted at running back 19. I think he's a top 12-ish guy. So obviously so far he is, but I think rest of the season. And Jamal Williams is currently 23, and I kind of think that's where he is. I think he's a top 25-ish guy. I think this is an offense that can support both, maybe closer to top 30. But he had a couple. We had one really great week. That week 1 was great for both of them. When that comeback, I think that was the 49ers game. But yeah, he can get the ball to the running backs, which I like that for Jared Goff. I hate on him so much, but I love what he does for the running back. So in a way, I kind of love him in a way.
Sure, we'll go with that. Way. I will say, they had decent weeks. I'm still going nowhere near any wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, they all had a lot of targets. There's one that might have a really good game. Raymond had 2 touchdowns, but he only had 6 targets, 3 for 46.
Yeah,
he's technically wide receiver 10, but don't look too much into that because 6 targets was 46 yards. Yeah. He hasn't shown that before, so
I think if you had to start one, he's been.
Yeah, he's probably the guy.
Kind of the best, but it's not good. And Hawkinson will be fine.
St. Brown had 8 targets. Hawkinson had 8 targets. So there's some deeper league guys. Definitely in deeper leagues, these guys, because they're seeing volume. They're going to give you something.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to be crazy deep for St. Brown, but other than that, yeah, the other 2 guys, I don't know. You want the running backs. Hawkinson will be fine. Other than that, just ignore the rest of the team. On the other side, we have Minnesota Vikings. Cousins, not a great week. He's had a pretty decent season up to this point. Not a great week. I don't know. Nothing exciting there. Cook didn't look fantastic in this game. He was coming off an injury that they weren't even sure he was going to play, so maybe he just wasn't. I'm sure he wasn't 100%. So, like I said, starting Cook hurt me a lot this week, but there's no way you're going anywhere near benching him. But the wide receivers, Justin Jefferson had a great week. He's still the guy there. And honestly, Thielen's going to be fine. He had a bad week, but what are you going to do, honestly?
Yeah, he had 8 targets. He's fine. You still plug him in.
I want to have something exciting, like some kind of take on this, and it's just like.
Well, the problem is that Cleveland played them really. It was a great defensive performance. Mm-hmm. I honestly chalk this up. Kirk Cousins has not had a bad game. As much as I kind of think of him as always been kind of average. I look at the numbers and I think it was, I don't know how many starts they said that he had a certain passer rating, quarterback rating. Like he's been like great for like 15 straight games or something, and he finally had a bad game. This was obviously a bad game. There's no doubt about it. But they didn't really have a run game. There wasn't really much. Like I don't know. Like I'm not saying it's not some of Kirk Cousins' fault, but Cleveland played defensively really well, and Minnesota played well. This was an ugly game. They both. It was like a 14-7 game. So I kind of put this one up as like a mulligan. Like, okay, let's not look too much into it. Justin Jefferson is fantastic. Thielen is fantastic. Cook is fantastic. Hopefully he gets healthy. He only was on the field about half the time. Obviously, if he's good to go, you're gonna put him out there. I shouldn't say wheel him because then it makes it like if he's healthy, if he's playing, I should say it might be wheeling out because if he's playing, you're gonna play him. But yeah, you're gonna play him. and Cousins is probably a 2 quarterback league start. I don't think, even though he's been solid, unless people are hoarding on the quarterbacks, you could start him in that 12-14 team league for sure as your quarterback one.
Oh yeah.
As a solid option. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He's currently 12, coming off a bad week, still at 12. So he's borderline QB1 right now, and he's had a couple good weeks before this week. So yeah, I think I
It's
think
Cook, Jefferson, Thielen.
yeah.
Like it is what we thought
Cousins,
it was.
you might start Cousins.
Cousins
Conklin is a sort of a. I would kind of consider him again with a lot of tight ends. He's kind of that. He's in that tight end one, late one, like boomer bust type. It's a good.
He's going to be a
offense.
guy I keep my eye on for bye weeks because I feel like he's not owned in a ton of leagues, but he's a super solid bye week option.
Yeah, it's a good offense. So he'll have some. I think he'll have some good weeks.
Yep. All right, we got the Broncos. Teddy went out with a concussion. Drew Lock came in 12 for 21. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're not going near a Broncos quarterback, so regardless of who it is, if anything, it matters a little bit for. And really, the only pass catcher you really want is Fant. So, do you think it makes any difference if Bridgewater or Lock starts on whether or not you're starting Noah Fant?
No, I don't think
Doesn't
so.
make any difference to you. Okay.
I
didn't think so either.
I do think Bridgewater has been solid. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he's been really solid.
NFL wise, yeah, I got no issues with him.
Yeah, he's been basically a quarterback 2 for the start. So, but that's about it. But yeah, I mean, I think Noah Fant's been fine. He's been where you drafted him. He's been real solid. Pretty consistent as well every week except week 3. So you're happy with Noah Fant, which is hard to do as a tight end to be kind of consistent. Not many like that. So yeah, I think Teddy, if he's able to come back, that does help for sure because he's been pretty solid, and that definitely will help guys like Sutton, who 3 for 47, obviously not the best day. I still think he's super talented. He's really only had one great week. Patrick, I like Pat. I was looking at the snap counts. Patrick was on the field 92% of the time. Sutton being 95%. Those are the only 2 guys that you would even consider starting. Maybe that deeper leagues. I think you're not even starting Sutton probably at this point. So you got to be in a deeper league. But yeah, those Patrick I think is interesting, and obviously Jerry Jeudy is the guy. Whenever he's healthy, I think he's still he's obviously on IR, but I think he's still planning to come back. I mean, he's obviously a guy you want to look out for whenever he comes back. But right now, yeah, it's really that. And then the running back is a complete 50-50.
Melvin Gordon. It is, but like the performance isn't. Like they might be playing 50-50, but Melvin Gordon's the guy you want.
Why do you think that? I mean, it's basically almost 50-50. Did you see that run by Javonte
Williams?
It's
50-50 in playing time, I get that, but if you just look at yes, last week they were close in rankings, but that was I don't know. I like the talent much more of Melvin Gordon. I feel like when it really comes down to it, they're going to lean on him.
Here's the reason I'm not necessarily leaning one way or the other. I think one, the time split is clear. It's basically 50-50.
No, I get that.
With snap counts almost every week, but also that run, there was a run he had where he went straight beast mode. If he would have got a touchdown, it would have been remembered as like a beast mode. Obviously, the stakes weren't really too high, but it was one of those runs. It's like one of the runs, it will maybe go to, maybe not the best run of the year, but it's going to be one of them. So, maybe they see that 31-yard run. Obviously, besides that, he had 6 carries.
I was going to say he had 16 yards on 16 other carries.
Okay, 17, but that's fine.
I have way less math education than you do.
But yeah, and he also had 3 catches. Melvin Gordon had 2. I honestly think they were both drafted around the same time. Obviously, Melvin's been better so far. But I think they're both kind of interesting, and they're both owned, obviously. Yeah. So it's more, you might start one or the other. Melvin, you're feeling a little bit better just because he's been more consistent. But I think there's a good chance that Javonte Williams ends up being the guy by the end. It ends up being that way. But for now, I would agree that you're starting Melvin.
I think I disagree with that, but I appreciate that you're at least willing to accept that Melvin Gordon's the guy right now. And then next week you'll be like, he's the guy right now. And then week 17, you'll be like, he's the guy right now. And then
yeah, we'll see about that.
So, all right. Hey, we don't have to agree on everything. It probably makes it more exciting if we don't. We've been doing too much of that. On the other side, we have the Hall of Fame quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. and the Steelers. He is not doing like his legacy is cemented, so it doesn't matter. But man, how much does he wish he had just retired after last season? Like,
I mean, the bank account probably. He likes money.
I think he's probably okay. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
I don't know.
I think his great grandchildren are probably okay. So I don't know. It's been poor, and we talked about this. We didn't think he was gonna be this bad. At least I didn't. I don't think you thought he was gonna be a bottom 2 quarterback in the league. But everybody thinking that they were gonna have 3 top 30 wide receivers aren't. I think we've been proven to be correct on that. So honestly, like, I don't really want any part of any of the on the wide receiver situation, but it's got to still be Deontay Johnson. Would you guess is the guy you want?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. I still like. I know he had a good game, but still, I don't. He's been okay.
He's currently like he missed a game, but he's currently I think wide receiver 8's pretty good. But obviously, that's kind of
fun fact. I missed that. Okay, so he's been better than I thought. It hasn't felt that great, but last week I knew he was good. But...
Yeah, so it really, I mean, week 2 was great too, and then obviously this week he was great.
All right,
13 targets. Yeah, I'm not a huge Juju fan, so I thought he was drafted way too high. I like Claypool, I like Johnson, I like both of them. Juju's fine. I just thought he was always going to be the guy who was the third guy out. But obviously it's. Yeah, there's a lot of luck. I don't know. I mean, these guys were drafted around the same time. I do think Johnson was the guy. I mean, he was drafted the first as well, so I'm not saying anything too crazy there. But I think obviously you're
yeah, but he was drafted first by like 5 spots. Yeah, like he wasn't.
But for wide receivers, you're definitely trying him out there. I think, and there's a good chance you are playing Chase Claypool if he does play. He did not play in this game. I think there's a good chance. But yeah, you gotta live with the fact that this offense is just not going to be able to support more than 1 wide receiver. Probably we said 3 is going to be tough. I don't know if it can do more than 1.
Yeah, I think I felt pretty good about 2, but
I think
I'm so worried about like Ben's not going to get better as the season goes. Like that's what my main concern with that. If I had any part of this offense,
this game wasn't. He actually wasn't terrible in this game, but obviously he only had 1 touchdown, but. He was fine. I don't think, being quarterback 28 is really true, based on some other quarterback performances. I think he's probably a little bit better. This week he actually was a little bit better than what that says, but that hasn't been the case maybe in week 3 and week 2. He's not been great. But
so he was the 25th best quarterback.
I mean, he hasn't been great, but this week wasn't absolutely awful. But Najee Harris, he's incredible. Just not from even from just a fan. I just really mean a fantasy and from a running back perspective. But he's been fantastic. He is getting so many catches. I don't even know. I actually have the number here because of he has 26 catches. Henry has 14. Patterson only has 18, so he has way more than him. McCaffrey, I mean, he has 16. Eckler 15. I mean, Aaron Jones 13. He has 26. That's crazy. It's just wild. So he's obviously playing well above where you drafted him at. So you're really happy with that. Even overcoming that first week, not giving you much, he has been fantastic the last 3 weeks.
If you happen to make a trade after week 1 where the owner was freaking out, congratulations.
Yeah. So yeah, Big Ben drop him. 2 quarterback leagues, I guess, like there's a chance that you might have to start him. That's about it.
And a 2 quarterback 15 team league.
But that's about it. You might have to start him in those. Outside of that, just to give you a snap count here, Juju's 95%, Johnson 92%. So once Claypool comes down, and James Washington was 82%. So they're a 3 wide receiver team. They do run 3 wide receivers exclusively. So you're going to see Juju, Johnson, Claypool all on the field. So daily fantasy, you could take a shot at one of them. One of them could definitely blow up, but it's just one of these that I don't trust nearly as much as I do the Cincinnati Bengals or Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah. All right. We have Miami at Tampa Bay. Miami's, I'm once again just trying to find new things to talk. I got nothing. Do you have anything on Miami? Honestly,
I could just mention real quick. Devontae Parker had 9 targets. So
yeah, he looked.
I mean,
he looked good this
only
week.
4 catches for 77 yards on those 9 targets. He did get in the end zone. The tight end, obviously, just starting him if you have him, probably. I mean, he's your tight end,
Yeah.
so you got to go with that. First couple weeks weren't great, but coming off a couple great weeks there, so yeah, you're happy. 5 for 57 and touchdown on your tight end. I mean, you're going to be ecstatic with that. Outside of that, yeah, not much. Myles Gaskin, I guess we have to mention, only had 2 carries. Not really sure what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I do want to make sure I get the snap counts in here. Only 23%. I'm not sure. Malcolm Brown, 67% of the snaps. Something to look out for. Obviously, after a game like this, Myles Gaskin immediately has to go to your bench, and not dropping him, obviously, but it is something to look at. You can't start him at all. If you're only on the field 23% of the time, it
No
can't be
chance.
like you can't play him. So don't know what's going on there. As far as I know, there was no injury, so maybe there was something that just wasn't reported, but I haven't heard anything. So just
You're
keep an
gonna
eye
need
on
to
that.
see something
You're gonna
before he
have
makes
to.
it
He's
back.
gonna have to be on your bench. And Waddle, just 3 for 33. Unfortunately, he's on the field a lot, so another boom. He's probably a boomer bust type of guy there, just because he's on the field a lot. He's a talented receiver. They'll probably hook up for some long touchdowns, some good plays, but if he doesn't get a touchdown, he's going to be pretty much fantasy irrelevant, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. On to my most disappointing team of the season, or not the season, the week. I hyped them pretty hard on our last episode. I thought they were going to go in and just kind of terrorize New England, and that is not what happened. So, that being said, you're also not worried about anybody you were starting anyway. So, Fournette looked pretty decent though. So he continues to look like the guy. They weren't 100% sure, and we kind of know we've known this all season, but continues to be a guy that you can comfortably put out in a comfortably might be stretching it, but like in a flex, or if you start 3 running backs or something like that, he's a guy where you feel okay about putting out there on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, he is clearly the guy. We didn't know going in. It was basically a crapshoot. We really don't know. Was it Fournette? Jones? I mean, they were drafted at the same
No.
time, basically. We had no idea, and it's obviously been Fournette. In this game, he was on the field 80% of the time. That is a big reason, probably because Gio did not play. So the 3 catches he had for 47 yards, a lot of those snaps probably do go. I mean, just to look at it back in week 3, Giovanni Bernard got 33 snaps. He only got 6 in week 2. 17 in week 1. But again, those snaps probably all would be taken away for Fournette. I think Fournette is generally, if Gio's not there, is your third down guy. So, I mean, Ronald Jones was only on the field 13 snaps. So it's clearly Fournette. You were happy with it. If you had him, you were definitely happy. Obviously, Jones got the touchdown, which is disappointing, but Fournette still, 3 for 47. That's, 7.7 there, plus his rushing. I mean, really solid game for Fournette. And then, Brady did not have he didn't have any touchdowns. It was really just an ugly game. And,
It was weird.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I'm going to put some of it on the rain, but that was definitely not all just rain. Like I
was really hoping they would make that field goal at the end, because I feel like Brady would have just went right down the field. That field goal, that long field, he just hit the crossbar. That I wish he would have made it. I don't know why they kicked that there, because I don't think there's any chance Brady was being stopped there. But I guess Belichick trusts his defense. Mike Evans, great, 12 targets. Antonio Brown got 11 targets. Nice to see him back in the offense. Chris Godwin, you're not really worried about. I'll say Godwin, Evans, obviously
you're starting.
Antonio Brown,
I think there's a lot of leagues where you're starting.
a good chance. And Antonio Brown was only on the field 50% of the time. So this is a team, I think, that really, I mean, just because I see that number, Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard were on the field quite a bit as a 2 tight end set. So it's not one of those offenses that is a 3 wide receiver set. So just think about that when you're setting your lineup. You might have a better option, or somebody that just plays more. If you're looking for a boomer bust type player, if you need, Antonio Brown is somebody who could give a lot of production, but he's probably a little bit more risky just because he's on the field less. So he's obviously a talented receiver, but when you're only on the field half the time, there's probably receivers that are around the same spot that are a little bit safer. So I guess it depends on your matchup, depends on how you're feeling. But to me, I think if you're only on the field half the time, there is obviously some risk compared to other guys.
That's fair. Brady does seem to look for him when he is on the field, though. So that's where the kind of the boom bust stuff comes in. All right. In the next game, we have New Orleans and Washington. Starting up with New Orleans. I mean, we've talked about this a few times. We've touched on it. Kamara's just been one of the biggest disappointments this year in fantasy. Just drafted him probably number 2 or number 3 overall. He's currently sitting at the 18th ranked running back. So I think it's safe to say, I know you've kind of touched. I mean, here's the thing. If he would have gotten a touchdown on Sunday, his day would have looked pretty decent. He had 120 yards, but I don't know. He's not. I don't have the stats for all the games, but I have a feeling he doesn't seem to be that involved in the passing game overall. I know he definitely wasn't last week. He doesn't seem to have that, and I don't know if that's a scheme thing or a Jameis Winston not being fantastic thing. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It's in this league right now, to have a running back that's not really involved in the passing game is a big damper on this value.
Yeah, I mean, you when you drafted him, you expected him to be involved. He has 10 catches on the year. I mean, 4 games, 10 catches. He didn't have a single catch this year. You tell me he gets 120 rushing yards, I'm telling you, he's probably a top 5 running back. You're expecting a touchdown in there, especially if you tell me he ran 26 times. You're expecting probably at least a touchdown, maybe a couple. Also, you're expecting close to a handful of catches as well. Yeah, this is not like Alvin Kamara, and it's not really his fault. I don't think he even got targeted in the passing game. He's on the field every play. Ty Montgomery does see a lot of snaps, some snaps in the backfield as well, some out wide. So maybe there's something there. He's kind of taken that role a little bit, but still, this is weird. Only 10 catches. I mean, just to look at it. I mean, Chase Edmonds, right? I mean, he is the receiving back over in Arizona, but has 20 catches. That's twice as many. I think we already mentioned like DeAndre Swift has 23. Najee Harris, we mentioned 26. Basically, all the running backs ahead of him almost have more catches than him. There's only a couple of them. Chubb, Montgomery, Moss, Henderson, Elliott. So there's like 4 of them, and he's running back 18. So like you don't expect that means there's like 12, 13 running backs that have more catches than him that are high. Like that's the reason. He's not involved in the passing game, and also a couple touchdowns wouldn't hurt as well. Just an overall disappointment. Obviously, there's not much you can do about it. He's playing. You are playing him.
Yeah.
But
that being said, that's the problem with the guy. Like some of the stuff is like we see all this and we're not happy about it. But there's also what are you going to do? Because I'm not going to be the guy that has Kamara on my bench when he goes off for 3 touchdowns. That ain't not going to be me.
Yeah, I mean, running back 22, if you were crazy enough to play, some of these running backs that finished ahead of him, be like, yeah, I played, I don't even know. I don't even know who was I'm sure there's a weird name that would finish ahead of him. Like, oh yeah, I played him over Kamara. Somebody probably did something crazy like that, and they think they're just a genius. I'll be okay not being a genius. I'll play Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, I mean, you're not going near Winston. The wide receivers, like it's Kamara on this team. It just is.
He doesn't. Winston just doesn't. He's not the old Winston. Sean Payton's not willing to let him loose. So, which may be fine for the football team, but not good fantasy. Oh, speaking of football team, I just kind of
there you go. Look at you. I like when you accidentally run into a transition. So we got Washington up next. There's definitely some names in here that have at least mildly outperformed, some that have underperformed. A guy that's actually looked pretty decent since he got the nod as the guy. Heineke has not looked like he's been serviceable in fantasy, which I don't think he's getting any like thought process almost in fantasy, but he's been 13.95 since he got the job.
Yeah,
I mean, you'll take that all day.
We went with Heineke actually, so we were happy with that. He had a really nice game. Not just that though, not just the 293 touchdowns, 43 yards on the ground. If a quarterback getting that sort of rushing, I mean that's going to be the difference between quarterback 10 and quarterback 5. That's that's a lot of points. 4 points right there. Justin rushing had a really nice game, even the last couple games coming in for Fitzpatrick. And this is the quarterback I think when week 1 he took over, and then since then. The last 3 weeks has looked really solid. Obviously, this game looks solid. this is the guy. I don't think Fitzpatrick is going to get this job back. I think you got to
No way.
you got to ride Heineke. So really happy with that. McLaurin is an absolute stud out of
Yep.
the Ohio State University. He is absolutely incredible. Are you rolling your eyes over there? Big Ten right there. Big Ten pride. Terry McLaurin.
I'll be honest. I thought I did that in my head. I didn't realize I did it outwardly.
Terry McLaurin. Unfortunately, anything else in the receiving game outside the running backs you don't really care about. Curtis Samuel does come back. We'll see with him how much, how that does get incorporated. Better days ahead for him. He had 4 targets, 4 for 19. Obviously not too much there, but I actually am kind of excited to see how he does do with Heineke here as they get more snaps together. I did talk about Diami Brown before. I think he's super talented, but now that Samuel is back, we'll see how that gets all sorted out. Obviously, you're not touching Diami Brown at all. You're not even touching Curtis Samuel yet, but I'm really excited about Samuel. Anything with the wide receivers outside of that, or you want to just go right into the running backs?
I would say let's just go to running back. Gibson's a guy you're a little bit disappointed with how he's been playing, but he's still a guy he's still the number 21 overall. He'll end the season a little bit higher than that. He might be a little bit behind where you draft him, but not too much. I'm not too worried about it. But McKissick is part of the plan here. Like, he's not going away. I don't know if he's necessarily a guy you're throwing out there in your starting lineup, but he's going to take some of Gibson's value the rest of the season, no doubt.
Yeah, wide receiver Adam Humphries was on the field for 67% of the time, but only had 1 target. So I think Samuel will come in. Humphries will go, back to kind of wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 with Diami Brown. Now, Gibson, J.D. McKissick. This is interesting because I think a lot of times a lot of people that drafted Gibson were expecting more of the receiving work, and McKissick kind of just said, like, I'm good. I'll take the receiving work. I'm fine with that, and that's where his value is coming. Gibson has been a little bit of a letdown just because. Obviously, you're getting currently running back 21. You got him at 12. That's a little bit of a letdown. There's worse draft picks for sure, but the problem is that you kind of expected it to be a little bit more in the receiving game, and it has been McKissick just so much value there. If you want to try to take a shot at a flex or when bye weeks come in, I think he's kind of interesting. I would definitely rate the Chubb and Hunt. Obviously, they're the prime duo, and then you got Swift and Jamal Williams. They're definitely ahead of them. But then, as 2 running backs with value, I don't think McKissick is really that far off. And some people might even say he's above Jamal Williams. I think he's kind of in that spot where it's like he sees a good amount. He actually got more snaps than. More percent of the snaps than Jamal Williams did in this game. He got 40%. I think Jamal only got like 30%. But he got 40% of the snaps. Gibson got 55%. Obviously, we see he's involved in the pass game. I don't know. I like guys that are involved in pass games. I like what they have. Obviously, if any injuries are happen, if either one of these guys, they're obviously vault way up because I think they're kind of hurting each other's value.
For sure.
For if one of them wasn't there, I think both of them would be absolute studs. So in this case, you just get both fine running backs.
Yep, and unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of times now. Is these timeshares just kind of hurt everybody? But like you said, Gibson's still to me a must start. But I think McKissick is a guy that on bye weeks especially could slot into your lineup and you'd be in a pretty decent spot. All right, last game of today's episode, we have Philadelphia and Carolina. A guy we've talked about a ton as surprising us and surprising most fantasy owners, obviously, because he was the 12th drafted quarterback. But Hurts continues to look great. I mean, it's the rushing, it's everything. I mean, you're from a football standpoint, you don't want your quarterback to be your number 1 rusher. From a fantasy point, we're all for it. So, but had another almost 400 yards passing, another almost 50 on the ground. I mean, you'll take that every single day.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic. I don't know. I mean, really, he's been top 10 every week. So, like,
Well,
I mean, there's not many quarterbacks, if any, I don't even know, have been maybe one other quarterback that's been top 10 every single
mhm.
week, one or two guys. So it might just be him, honestly. I'd have to look at it. But yeah, he's been super consistent. You got him at ADP of 12. Guess what? He's finished above that not once, not twice, not three, but all 4 weeks. And he's currently quarterback three because
Way
of
to
that
show off that you can
consistency.
count.
Yeah, so I got a math degree, so I did some things, but yeah, he's been fantastic. Wide receivers, unfortunately, I mean he has been great. I mean Smith had the 10 targets, 7 for
Oh,
122, obviously no touchdowns. So uh, Goddard is continuing to be a solid tight end option,
yep.
but not much else there. I don't think even Smith you're feeling super excited about. Obviously, after this game, you feel a lot better. Getting a 10 target, 7 for 122. There's a chance that he does get into your lineup, especially in deeper leagues. Probably will. But the running back situation, we will talk more
No.
about. So make
Yeah.
sure to check that out. But
Yeah, we're gonna do a quick
Kenneth
hit pick.
Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Sanders, there's some interesting stuff. You can tell by the
Yeah.
box score that this is a running back situation that might need to be discussed. So we're going to talk more
Yeah.
about that in a quick hit video. Definitely check that out. A short video just looking at that specific matchup or
Yeah.
those
But
duo right there.
if you like, obviously that's not coming out until next couple of days. So there's a possibility. It's unlikely, but I bet there are leagues out there where Gainwell's still available, and if that is your league, change that. And you'll probably have to be pretty high waiver priority if he is still available. But he had a great week 4, and it wasn't that big of a fluke. So, yeah, check out Glenn Gainwell if he's out there. He is very involved in the passing game. At least last week was very involved in the passing game, and a guy who I think universally everybody thought this running back situation was kind of set in stone. Like, yes, Gainwell was going to get some touches, but this was Sanders' job. It's starting to lean a slightly different way.
Yeah, and just not to spoil too much because we'll have to save something, but I am somebody who is very intrigued with what's happening here, and I am not all in. I am not a stay the course on Miles Sanders. I'll go ahead and say that. I
Yeah.
very concerned or excited, depending on which side you want to look
Which side
at.
you're on. So, all right, our last team of the day. Can you believe that we're halfway through week 5 already? Like, I feel like we just like, yes, this is our first season doing the show, and we appreciate everybody's here. We really do. It seems crazy to me that we're already halfway through talking about week 5. I
Yeah,
feel like we just started the NFL season.
it is. It's this season is already flying by. I think when we get an extra week, maybe that will help. I don't know.
Hopefully, absolutely. So, all right, for the Panthers, we have maybe the biggest, other than I. You know what? I'll say it. Bigger surprise than Jalen Hurts. Is Sam Darnold good at foot? Was it all the Jets? Was it just the Jets? Are they the problem?
Yes, I think so, and I think he is. I think he's good. He had a
Yeah.
couple picks, and I'm remembering one specifically, but I think both of them were not great. But yeah, 300 yards, couple touchdowns. Obviously, from a fantasy perspective, he did pretty well because he
Hmm.
is number one, and that means that there wasn't a single guy that was ahead of him. That's how that works.
You know what? I'm
So
gonna have to write that one down because like I wasn't 100% sure what the number one meant, and now I know, and I feel like that's really gonna help me going forward
I
doing the
made this
show.
spreadsheet and I put it there, and it has a one right
I
there.
know, but
Week
you didn't
four,
explain what that
I
meant.
know,
I was
but
confused.
but if you look at week 3, he was number 5. There was actually 4 guys ahead of him, so he's been pretty good
Okay,
the
this is
last
blowing my
couple
mind.
weeks. Yeah, just so you know, and currently quarterback 5, and that is quite amazing. So
Yeah.
Sam Darnold gets out of New York and is just playing fantastic.
There's a
Uh,
guy if you happen to draft your I don't know why you would have or anything.
Even in like two
But
quarterback leagues, you probably did.
but if you like there's probably I guarantee like
Probably
obviously
maybe.
people picked him up after week 1 or even like week 1 or week 2 like
Yeah, after
he's
week 2, and it's like, oh, he's pretty solid. It's 2 quarterback leagues. Even after week 1, you might have, but like this is crazy.
yeah,
And I believe we're gonna even talk more about him here
we are.
in a day or two. So just check that out. But obviously, we've already shared quite a bit. He's been pretty good. But I think what's maybe even more interesting for a lot of people because there's a good chance we'll talk more about like on that video, we're going to talk about who would rather have Sam Darnold or. So that's going to be a thing that I want to discuss. I always think those are fun. Like who you would want to start rest of the season sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, I think, is DJ Moore and this wide receiver core. The fact that Sam Darnold has been so good, we get a top 5, currently number 5 wide receiver, DJ Moore, has been absolutely fantastic. This guy is amazing. I do think it maybe has to do with Robbie Anderson not doing a whole lot, so DJ Moore's getting all the love, but like he's been incredible. If you got him at wide receiver, 22 is what his ADP was, around that, obviously you're super excited. One of the steals of the draft. I mean, it has a lot to do probably because Darnold is way better than we expected. But like,
well, that's the thing is nobody expected Darnold to do this. So in turn, that meant nobody expected his wide receivers to do this. So when one does it, there's a correlation there somewhere. I might not be good at numbers, but I know that you need a good quarterback to have a very good wide receiver. I know that.
It usually helps. And with that said, Diggs was on him, and he did have a couple picks, and people might look at it and be like, "Wow, he shut down." No, Moore had a great game, and Diggs is he's got a lot of promise, but DJ Moore beat him on a lot of routes, so he was fantastic. And Robbie Anderson, it's nice to see him back. He got 11 targets, only had 5 catches, but back to see him involved with a decent game here. I mean, decent for how his season has been going. 5 for 46. I still think I might have been a little bit, because now that we see this game, I wouldn't have yet, but I still think he's close to being borderline droppable. I mean, 11 targets, 5 for 46. I think it's close. I don't know. I mean,
I would
targets. You probably have to hold on to somebody that. After this game, you definitely probably have to, but. I don't know. Like,
I wouldn't fault you if you did.
This is like his best game. I mean, week 1, I guess, fantasy wise, he was 43. This is 45. He's been the best performance he's had is wide receiver 43. I mean, obviously DJ Moore has been fantastic, so there's that. But I mean, maybe some of that does come back to earth, and maybe Robbie gets a little bit. But I don't know. I'm kind of off on the Robbie Anderson train, and I am all in on DJ Moore. I love that man. Sure. He is so good.
All right. The one last thing on this one, Chuba has been fantastic in his since he took over. I'm still putting him in every week. I think it is so rare to get the guy that I still think you have to start him every week until McCaffrey's back, which I think I'm not 100% sure when McCaffrey's come back, but I don't know how you feel, but I'm still putting him in.
Yeah, if McCaffrey's out, you probably are starting him.
Yeah.
Would like to see him to be a lot more involved.
Absolutely.
See Rodney Smith get those 5 catches. You like those to go to Hubbard, only 2 for 14. You'd like to see that. But, 57 yards, 4.5 yards a carry is not great. But you probably still rolling him out there. And the thing with Hubbard, he only got half the snaps. So that's the concern, though, is I was expecting that to be more like 70%, 60, 70, and it was 47%. So I am concerned, but I do think he'll be a flex play. I think he was ranked, obviously, around running back 15. This week, I think he's going to fall significantly. I think he's going to be somewhere in the mid-20s if McCaffrey doesn't play, and maybe even closer to 30. I think it's hard when you only play 50% of the snaps coming off of a meh game to rank him much higher than that.
Well, I don't know. There's something about it. We've talked about a lot of teams who are in, I get the 50% snap thing, but those aren't the Rodney Smith stamps aren't. He's not getting rushes when they're running the ball. It is Chuba. I know, but when they're running the ball, it's Chuba.
But he had 15 touches. I don't know. I mean, that's obviously not McCaffrey. You're not expecting it to be McCaffrey.
No.
But 15 touches is that's enough to do something with. But you'd like to see more. Obviously, in the passing game, especially, that's where a lot of value is going to come. And we were expecting more. I thought at least there was going to be more there.
Oh, I absolutely thought it was going to be more, but
one game sample size. Obviously, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson got 23 of the targets, so there's a lot of them right there. But could be the way that game went to game flow as well with with Hubbard and Rodney Smith and Royce Freeman. It could have been that. Just game flow as well. You just never know what the whole game plan was. But for this game, you're obviously disappointed if you started Hubbard, but I think there's a good chance you're starting him.
Yeah, for sure.
In the next, if McCaffrey's out.
All right, so that gets us halfway through week 5 of the NFL season. Still can't believe it's that far in. If you made it this far, thank you very much. It means a ton to us. Throw us a like if you haven't already. Subscribe. We're putting out 5 episodes a week. 2 of these longer ones, 3 short ones. Leave a comment. Helps us out. Share with a friend. And we will see you tomorrow for a quick hit.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely like, subscribe. It's all free. It's all free. If you made it this far, I mean, how do you not? Thank you so much. We'll be back Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we take a few days off. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, all that. It's 5 days a week. See you guys in about 24 hours from the day this video went up. So have a good one. Peace.
See ya.